Hello， 各位观众，大家好，我是华盛证券 FICC 的 Suki。
大家好，我是 Edmund。
不好意思，今天让大家久等了啊。今天呢，我们要聊的话题呢，其实是 AI。AI 也是一个常年就是盘踞在这个热点话题上面啊。那其实 AI 从去年开始，大概11月份那个 OpenAI 把那个 ChatGPT 就是推出之后呢，其实把 AI 整个话题，我觉得可以说是带到了一个就是前所未有的一个点啊，大家都在网上面不停的去尝试跟这个 ChatGPT 聊天，也出现了一些非常有意思的话题。那其实呢，我们今天是邀请了一位嘉宾，但因为这个嘉宾他在纽约，然后他所在的地方出现了一些小小的技术上的故障，所以今天没有办法跟我们分享。但我们还是想要今天跟 Edmund， 然后跟各位观众一起介绍一下AI， 然后以及这家公司的背景。那我先来哦，就是我们本来今天邀请的这位嘉宾呢，他其实是一个妥妥的学霸。他16岁的时候呢，已经是这个奥巴马竞选办公室的一员之一，16岁哦。然后21岁在那个 Princeton 毕业之后呢，就创立了这个公司叫 FiscalNote。然后创业了之后呢，他还有一个非常有趣的小故事，就是他当时就是想要融资嘛，因为创业开始，他就通过有一天就突发奇想，我可以让 Mark Cuban 来投资我的这个公司，然后他就在 Google 上面呢找到了这个 Mark Cuban 的 email。然后就直接发了一个 email 给这位鼎鼎大名的，可以说是一个 VC 投资人吧。
对，Suki，你知道，就是美国创业的时候，他们应该是资金很少，只有几千块美元。
对，
所以住在一个叫 Motel 6的一个小公寓里面。
对，然后睡在一些就是披萨盒上面，是非常我觉得热血的就是年轻人创业的一个故事。对，然后神奇的是在呢，这个 Mark Cuban 居然在1个小时之内就回了他的 email，说好啊，过来我们公司聊聊。对，我对你的 idea 有感兴趣哦。
所以我觉得创业除了你是一个学霸，你有这个认知以外，勇气也是一个很重要的 element， 对吧？
是的，是的，而且这个初生牛犊不怕虎吧，我感觉也是。
对，你怎么会真的扣 email 去一个这么大的人物？
对
啊，但是这个 email 应该很有素质了，不然的话人家不会秒回，也不是秒回来，1个小时这样你回你已经很好了。
对，这个对于 Mark Cuban 来说，我觉得也是挺高效的一个速度了。那可以请 Edmund 跟我们讲一讲这家公司具体是干什么的吗？
其实以我理解的 FiscalNote 这家公司是他们是怎么样呢？他们是就找一些资料，这个资料库里面就是一些政府的一些政策的资料。还有就是比方说新闻啊，他们就把一些因为这些资料都是很明确的，他们就是处理完以后，又通过这个 AI 的技术做一个分析，所以他们的客户呢其实很特别，是政府的机关，很多大部分都是政府的机关，也不限于美国本土，但是他们是从美国而来啊，他们美国本土的机关是很多啊，但是也最近也去了欧洲啊、亚洲啊那些地方去做他们拓展。所以除了这个政府的机关以外比方说一些我们说的 NGO， 就是非政府的机构，还有一些国际性的机构，比方说联合国啊那些都是他们的一个客户名单里面所以他们就是用这个 AI 的技术去分析这个政府的政策，还有就是比方说你是一些私人的机构，如果你要推一些产品，尤其是如果你是一个国际性的机构，对吧？你要推一些产品、一些服务出去，你比方说 Uber 那些，你对比的这个市场，这个政府是很多方面的，不纯粹是一个国家，是很多国家不同的政策。你要怎么去推？你的就是商业的计划，政府的一些规划，对你的商业政策对你的商业这个计划是有什么影响？你怎么去避讳了某一些事情？你怎么去推你的效果是最好的？也对政府那边的政策是做的最完善， 这些都是他们去研究的一个方向。所以他们的客户是一个，比方说给了一个费用给他们去拿这些有分析的资讯。所以这个是一个很牛的一个 idea， 就是因为你看 Tim 的 background， 他就是从年轻的时候已经参与了这个美国总统的竞选，所以他也是好像
去帮美国总统竞选，
也参与了一些好像是一个某一些州份的一些政府的一个 budgetary 的一些事务，他也参与，所以他在政府里面，他在读书以后已经对从政已经很有兴趣了，所以但他再加上他的专业的一些 idea， 所以就开始开创了这家公司。他开创了这家公司以后，也拿到了短时间以内拿到超过100万美元的一些融资，对吗？你说的马库本啊，还有 Jerry Yang 啊，那些也是带头都慢慢去投这家公司，觉得他的 idea 是很前的，所以对他们来说就。慢慢的从这个 A 轮、B 轮再发展到现在好像去年已经上市了，它就成为这个差不多是最年轻的亚裔的这个美国上市的 CEO，所以这个人是真的是一个很优秀、很牛的人所以今天本来我们很幸运的请到他，但是现在 we schedule 没事，我们先说说他的背景，先说说这家公司的背景，下次我们对这个事情多一些理解的时候，他再来跟我们说一说这个 AI 怎么应用因为说一说公司就是最近如果大家有留意这个OpenAI 跟 ChatGPT 的一些新闻，就知道最近上个月吧，他们就找了14家公司，去这个 ChatGPT 里面放这个 plugin 在，所以这个的话就变成 ChatGPT 跟这些公司就有个 interface， 可以用到他们的资料库。可以用到他们的一些数据跟 algo 分析能力去做一个更好的。比方说，如果你在 ChatGPT 里面问一些政策的问题，那你在 select 这个 FiscalNote 的 plugin 的时候，它就会去 Fiscal 那边去研究，去拿这些资料，去分析一个更好的答案。所以这个对整个AI 这个 ChatGPT 的层面就是另外一个提升所以这个也是一个很有趣的 topic。
对，因为今天也是非常遗憾本来我们这个节目会是变成一个像就是英语角的一个环节，会用英文进行，但也是因为Team 那边的技术问题，今天也没办法播入。那我们今天就简要的给大家卖个小关子，预热一下。那等到我们下次节目的时候呢，那我们可以邀请Team 来跟我们分享更多。那我们既然今天我们聊到 AI 那我们看一下Edmund 大哥对这个 AI 的理解会怎么样呢？因为其实当我本人当时就是第一次使用这个 ChatGPT 的时候呢，当他帮我就是美化了。非常快速的帮我做了一篇文章的时候，我就深深的就是感觉到了这个威胁，就感觉我要失业了。我相信可能就是有一些就是工作，是不是其实也会？您觉得，比如说在将来的可能5到10年里面。或者是更短的时间里面，我看到 Edmund 大哥觉得这么乐观，5到10年，你觉得这么慢吗？是不是就会被就是 AI 给替代掉呢？
我觉得这个问题很难回答，但你说的很对，这个发展是很快的，所以我们才需要一些专家来回应我们问题。但好像现在我们的职务组的人跟我说，好像 Team 已经解决了他那边的技术问题，他可以进来跟我们一起去讨论，所以我们看看那边我们 ready 没有？好，非常好。然后我们直接就进入 Team
英语角开始。
对，大家留意一下如果有问题的话，有尽量用英语去问。Hi Team。
Hi Team, can you hear us?
Hi, Team.
Hi from Hong Kong.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Hi, great.
Perfectly.
Great. Appreciate you having me on here, but great to be on.
Great, Tim. Good to have you here and to share some thoughts with our audiences today. So, Tim, can you give us some background of yourself and your company and how you started the company anyway?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, so my name is Tim Hwang. I'm the founder and CEO here at FiscalNote. Basically at FiscalNote, what we do is we are the Bloomberg terminal for law. Essentially what we do is we aggregate laws and regulations and court cases from around the world. And then what we are able to do is understand how laws and regulations are able to impact, the sort of universe of companies and government agencies around the world. So my own background, I started off in government, really helping people understand how government impact will potentially impact, laws and regulations. And what we're able to do is really take a look at how the use of artificial intelligence is able to potentially impact, sort of the impact of the legal industry, and be able to understand how AI can actually automate, the way that we understand laws and regulations around the world today.
我看到评论区有小朋友说，英文有点听不是很懂啊。那我这边快速的翻译一下。那我们今天的嘉宾呢是 Tim Hwang， 他是 FiscalNote 的创始人兼 CEO， 也是像我们刚刚说的是这个最年轻的亚裔的在纳斯达克上市公司的这个 CEO。那FiscalNote 呢，它本身是做一个通过这个 AI 去做一个像政策情报的分析平台，就类似像是我们非常熟悉的 Bloomberg， 但是这个法律或者是这个监管的这个版本，
政府政策。对，
那它是主要是用于比如说像一些监测啊、分析啊，或者是预测比如说可能各个地区或者是全球的这个政策的变化，会对比如说企业或者是政府一些NGO 的这些影响会是什么，然后以及帮他们去做一些应对措施吧。Thanks, Tim. I just get a brief translations for our audience. So, would you please tell us more about what type of industries or organizations can benefit most from FiscalNote's tech, and who are your major clients?
Sure. So, FiscalNote today we service about 5,000 customers, and of those 5,000 customers, what I would say is that we service everyone from major government agencies. So in the U.S., for instance, we service the White House, the FBI, the CDC. Every single member of the United States Congress is a customer of ours, and so they actually use FiscalNote to understand things like digital diplomacy, trade negotiations, customs, tariffs, anything related to law, right? So lawmakers for themselves are trying to understand how they can actually use FiscalNote, use AI with respect to laws and regulations to really understand what the changes in laws and regulations could be that would impact the actual decisions that they're making themselves. In addition to government agencies, so we have not only U.S. government agencies, but folks like the UN or NATO or World Trade Organization and others. We have a large number of companies. So you can imagine almost every major Fortune 100 company dealing with healthcare or pharmaceuticals or energy, financial services will use FiscalNote to understand, in their particular industry, how laws and regulations will potentially impact their particular regulations and the like. And then the last, of course, is NGOs. So large number of NGOs. You can imagine hospitals as an example that really need to understand pharmaceutical regulations or healthcare regulations, the impact of those regulations on their particular industries. And so NGOs are a great example of customers that really use FiscalNote even on the long tail end side of things, where they'll pay us a very small amount of money, but there's a very, very large number of them that really want to understand how laws and regulations potentially impact their particular organizations and how they operate doing business overall.
Okay, can you walk us through an example, like really details, for example, an NGO that you mentioned, some cases or some examples that they really use FiscalNote's platform to solve some problems or make a plan?
Yeah. So as an example, I'll give you three very quick examples, right? So one example is the U.S. Federal Reserve. So the U.S. Federal Reserve, as they're changing interest rates for the entire country, they'll use our platform to understand how other countries are changing their interest rates, or other governments are changing their fiscal policies or taxation policies, to understand how they inform their decisions. So the economists and the policymakers all around the world are using our platforms to really kind of understand those decision making. Maybe you're a company like Lyft or Blue Cross Blue Shield or Chevron that needs to understand transportation regulations or food safety regulations, or a number of different regulations around food packaging or sustainability. So they'll use FiscalNote to monitor food safety regulations in Indonesia, or food packaging regulations in Mexico. And so they'll actually aggregate all that information and then actually help them inform the decisions that they're making in factories, or whatever the case may be. And then let's say you're a major NGO. So let's say you're a hospital like St. Jude's or something, and you're trying to understand the rate of insurance collections from the insurance companies, or you're trying to understand the capacity of a certain building for your hospital or something like that. So FiscalNote will essentially help you to go in and understand how the laws and regulations are changing to manage that hospital. And that, I think, is obviously very important for day-to-day operations at the end of the day.
That sounds quite interesting. 就像刚 Tim 所说的，可能是比如说这个利息的变化会影响税务，或者是一些食物这些食品的生产商，那它可能比如说在印尼或者是墨西哥，它有不同的这个食品安全的要求，那他们可以用这个 FiscalNote 去判断说，我在当地建厂会需要用到一些什么样的规则，或者是他们有什么样的要求，
对，还有医药啊，
对，
医院啊，
像医院这种，这个我觉得医院作为例子也是非常的有趣，因为
所以他们的主客户大部分都是政府的机构啊，那些公共的机构，
Thanks, Tim. Would you please share us more about how do you ensure the quality and the accuracy of the data? I mean, particularly when dealing with unstructured data sources, because I mean AI for the outsider, we feel like it's just a piles of enormous unstructured sources. What roles does the machine learning play in this process?
Yeah. So the reality is that in order to build a company or a service like this, it requires tremendous amounts of data. I'm talking hundreds of billions of pages of text. So we get billions of pages of information from Mexico and from France and from Germany. Right. Just court cases that are just flowing in from Indonesia and from Australia. So what we do is we essentially build an AI-based system that collects hundreds of billions of pages of laws, and then uses AI to clean that information up, to structure that information, and then to build automated analytics and servicing capabilities on top of it. So, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a little bit, but we ended up partnering with very recently with ChatGPT and OpenAI, in the legal space. We are actually OpenAI's only legal partner, basically servicing a very small sliver of our legal and regulatory information, and helping them understand how laws and regulations will potentially impact our customers and the like. And that's really because we have such a high quality level of legal information, where we've built over almost 10 years of very, very, very quick and very heavily invested AI capability to understand how laws and regulations will potentially impact a particular industry.
have you ever compared, let's say, those tons of pages of the material or the laws that you know the AI has to analysis, and how long would it take if we have a team of like 10 persons analysis it? Like,
yeah, I would say that collectively we probably invested close to almost $100 million in artificial intelligence in the legal space, you know, over, you know, call it a 7 or 8 year period. So it does take a very initial high level of investment in order to actually build the defensibility of the artificial intelligence capabilities. I think that the second thing is that our AI, you know, gets better over time. So what that means is that, you know, as more and more people use the platform, it actually gets better and better and better. So, you know, very similar to the way in which, you know, Baidu or Google effectively get better and better by having more and more users, because those users feed in search data that gets better and better over time. You know, I think with our case, as we get more and more customers on our platform, you know, the ability for us to be able to get more relevant information and get information that's really in service of our customers, I think is very valuable. And so I think ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the most defensible and most highly relevant legal search engine on the planet. I would say almost unequivocally that you know, the current major search engines like the Googles and the Baidus and the rest of the world are incapable of doing very technical, highly relevant legal search because it requires a highly technical level of information and something that we've already built, you know, as a company overall.
OK， 所以听你说了，他们投放了很多钱，超过1个亿美元，在这个 AI 这个 data 的研发方面。所以他们是现在就是应该是最大的一个 AI 就在政府政策上、
法律方面
去提供给公司的一个资讯。他们的也通过大家的，比方说用这个 AI 也会慢慢去学习，所以他们的 AI 只会更加好，就是通过这个经验。
其实说到这儿呢，我们评论区也有一位叫狮子座总舵的观众提了类似的一样问题啊，就是因为像刚刚听美说到，我们会给很多的资讯，或者是当我们每次使用它，其实 AI 它的这个算法，或者是它输出的这个结果会更加的精确。那其实我们一直对这个AI 或者是他问的是对 ChatGPT 的这种训练越来越多，一直这么训练的话，其实是不是真的只会越来越好，而不会有任何的负面的东西产生？
我有一些 OpenAI 跟 ChatGPT 的问题，我要问Tim，刚好，那我一起去问他好不好？Hey Tim, we actually have a question from our audience, and also I have a similar question here actually. So we know that what we just mentioned, FiscalNote has recently become partnership with ChatGPT, and you are using a plugin, as I know. Can you tell us more about your partnership with OpenAI and how it enhanced the AI capabilities, and through the interaction and learning, would the model become better and better?
Yeah. So the thing about AI, as people know, is that data is the most valuable asset in the AI industry. So it's actually very similar to the oil industry, right? So in the oil industry, you know, getting the flow of that resource from the ground is the most important thing that you can actually harvest. In the AI industry, the people that have the most relevant information and the highest amount of data from their customers and users are the people that are going to win at the end of the day. So, you know, for FiscalNote, you know, we obviously, as I mentioned, we have about, you know, almost 5,000, 6,000 customers that are constantly feeding us information. Information like, oh, I'm interested in this law. I really want to know about this government. But at the end of the day, we want to keep expanding our business and become, you know, the top leader in legal artificial intelligence. Right. And so we need to get access to more information. So we partnered with ChatGPT, and with ChatGPT, what that effectively enables them to do is people are asking ChatGPT legal questions. You know, they're asking things like, what is the U.S. Congress most interested in? How might this tax law change? Is this law important to me or not? And so what we're doing is we're taking those questions, those search questions, and then we're feeding them into our own AI. And then essentially using our AI to get better and better and better, feeding a small number of answers, and then making the legal AI component of our information a lot more relevant, while also answering a small number of questions for ChatGPT's customers. So ultimately what you do is you sort of have these general AI plus legal AI systems that are getting faster and faster and faster over time. And my general intuition over the next couple of years is that there's going to be a small number of winners, right? So, Microsoft and Apple and Amazon and others, they're all launching their general AI systems. And then at the same time, there's probably going to be, a financial AI, a healthcare AI, a legal AI, that essentially win, in their particular categories by training their AI systems to be, much better, much faster. So I would argue that FiscalNote is the legal AI, winner in the market, and we are getting better and better over time.
Right. Great. Yeah.
I also get another questions from the audience, which I was about to ask also. Like we keep talking how accurate the AI is, probably I could use the word smart, how smart the AI is, even, the humans program them and feed them with the data. Like, how could you, or how does the company measure the accuracy? How can you make sure that they won't make any mistake?
Yeah, no, that's a very great question. So in the data space, what we do is we have a series of systems that enable us to understand accuracy in a very different way. So there's accuracy, for instance, in terms of timeliness, in terms of completeness, in terms of correctness. So as an example, let's say that you're Bloomberg and you're trying to supply stock prices. So the stock price that you're providing customers, it has to be correct, right? But how do you define correct? Correct could be the price that it was at 1041 versus 1042. So it needs to be timely in some form or fashion. You can't just supply the price, but you also need to supply, let's say, the name of the company or the financial information for the company, in the right way. And so it also needs to be correct in some form or fashion. And then so if something is timely and it's correct, it also needs to be complete, right? So the information can't be missing anything. Otherwise people will be complaining about how, let's say it's, in our case, a court case is missing who the judge is or what the title of the law is, or whatever the case may be. So I know those sound like very, very small things, but for customers, especially legal customers, they really want to understand the basic foundational components of quality information. And then from there, the quality information becomes the foundation to be able to build additional things like summaries, as an example, right? So humans are very, very good at saying, oh, this tax law is changing in this way, or, the trend in Southeast Asia, around construction regulations is moving in this direction. But computers are only just getting to that point. And so we need to have very, very good quality information to say, construction regulations in Thailand and Vietnam and Indonesia are changing, in this direction. And that really starts from, having high quality information that's complete, that's correct, that's timely. And we use AI as a company to be able to kind of measure all those things in a very, very quick fashion.
Okay, since you mentioned like investment process, we know that a large number of your customers are also like asset managers, hedge funds, and also our audience are some who probably very interested in investing. Also, mostly our audience are professional investors. So, can you tell us more about this type of customers? How can they use your products to generate better investment ideas or make better investment decisions?
Yeah, we have a large number of investment customers. I would say folks like Blackstone or Bridgewater, who use FiscalNote to monitor changes in two ways. So the first way is new investment ideas. Most companies are very, very, very heavily government regulated. So imagine, for instance, a pharmaceutical company, a pharma company that wants to enter a new market, right? So they'll say on their earnings calls and their news releases, hey, we created a new drug. We want to expand into Indonesia, or we want to expand into Australia. Well, the reality is that you need to get approved by those governments to sell in those markets. So, what FiscalNote will do is we'll tell you how those pharmaceutical regulations are changing and what you need to comply with to actually sell those drugs in those particular markets. That's, if you're an investor trying to understand, oh, can this company actually sell their drugs in Japan or in Indonesia? You need to understand how hard it is. How hard is it to enter that market from a regulatory perspective? I think the second thing is, let's say you are already invested in a company and the government is very, very interested in that company for some reason, right? So let's say it's a bank or a telecommunications company, and politically, for instance, let's say in Italy or in France or Germany or something, the government is interested in taxing that entity or penalizing that company in some way. So we actually will use AI to pick up the political trend of a particular industry and say, oh, it's very, very likely that the government is going to tax Polish energy companies at a very high level because of X, Y, and Z. Because this minister said this, or this member of parliament said that, and so we can actually inform investors in understanding risk areas that they want to avoid. So maybe you sell your position, very quickly, or you get an early alert, to how regulators may potentially impact a particular company. I think that that's very valuable for people that really want to understand, particularly industries and extremely regulated industries like in pharma or energy or financial services or telecom, where companies are constantly going up and down based off what the government says.
Right.
那所以其实像 Tim 刚刚讲到，就是如何把这个 AI 的技术运用到他们的这个投资策略里面。就是 Tim 讲了一些例子，比如说当一个投资人他可能想要投资一个医药类的股票，对，那他可能比如说这医药类的股票说我今年预计要推出一个新的药品，那其实这个药品可能投资人他自己就可以，比如说用这个 FiscalNote 或者是其他 AI 的这些工具吧，去分析一下，看看，那这个药物，比如说在这些地区上市是不是真的这么容易呢？那可能经过一轮分析之后发现，这个药是比如说在监管范围内是很容易就可以上市的，那这个药业公司就能获利。对，那可能经过一轮分析之后发现，这个药在比如说可能某些国家地区是禁止的，那么不能上市的，那这个其实可能就会影响到这个药业公司的这个盈利的能力。那其实 AI 在投资决策方面，我觉得在现阶段更多的还是说不是说我输入几个股票代码就让那个就让 AI 跟我分析说，哪个股票能赚钱，能赚更多，最终还是要通过这个我们自己的决策去判断。So Tim, what I was just talking about is your pharmacy examples, and also because some of our audience ask if they could just put like 5 stock number in some AI system, and then the AI could tell which one could make money or how much could they make. So basically, I just said it's pretty impossible. I think eventually the decision making should, after you get all the information from the AI, then you should make the decision of which stock that you should choose or invest.
So I will say, for instance, one of FiscalNote's biggest investors is a company called S&P, and so Standard & Poor's actually is a big investor of ours. So we actually have built a series of indices where we essentially track regulatory activity by company and by industry as well. So you can actually, in FiscalNote today, you can actually type a ticker, of a company, and we can tell you all the associated regulations with that company. So if you type in, Johnson & Johnson, or if you type in, Pfizer or something, we'll tell you from Germany to Indonesia to Australia to Mexico, every single regulation that's impacting that company. We actually have also run algorithms historically on buying and sell patterns based off of the sentiment of those regulations. So is it positive or negative based off of the actual passage of those laws? So directionally, it actually outperformed the S&P. But I think that more importantly, what we're trying to see is how do we actually help inform investors about key risks in a company? And to be totally honest, one of the biggest risks is obviously government. And so to your point, obviously we want investors to make their own decisions, particularly, folks in private equity or other industries. But I think, so often, investors may, potentially ignore or glance over the regulatory risks. And I think that we're providing the relevant information for our customers at the end of the day.
Great. So Tim, you actually mentioned of Asian countries, and I know you are expanding your footprint globally. So when it comes to Asian markets, do you see some specific challenges or maybe some good opportunities that you have here?
Yeah. So we currently have offices today in Seoul, in Taipei, in Singapore, and in Sydney. So we are expanding our business very aggressively, in the Asian markets. I would say that, Asia is very, very important to us because the market is so regulated. The governments are so active, in terms of moving particular industries in certain directions that the growth of the legal industry is actually extremely fast and extremely quick. We are expanding up and down, the Asia corridor right now. And a large number of two things. A large number of customers are coming into the FiscalNote platform that are based in Asia, right? So you can imagine, a Taiwanese computer manufacturer, or a semiconductor company in Korea, or a pharmaceutical company in Japan, or an energy company or mining company in Australia. They're all regulated, and they essentially need to use some platform, AI platform, to help them understand those laws and regulations. The second area is our global customers. So imagine the Nestle's that are based out of Europe, or the Blue Cross Blue Shields, or Chevrons, or whatever the case may be, that need to understand global regulations, are very, very, very interested in Asia. It is their growth area for their businesses. And so let's say that Samsung wants to open up a semiconductor factory in Vietnam, or let's say Toyota wants to build a distribution center in Indonesia. So I think what we'll find oftentimes is that those customers will rely on our platforms to understand labor regulations, environmental regulations, safety regulations, import duties and taxes and customs, within our platform, to help them, kind of inform the entirety of their business over a long period of time.
OK， 那 Tim 也说了，就是他在亚洲，他们也增加了，比方说台湾啊，跟还有韩国的 office， 所以他们现在尤其是亚洲这个市场，其实是有很多监管的，所以对他们来说。其实是一个机遇，因为他们可以对这个国际的一些当地的公司也好，国际的公司也好，跟他们分析，跟他们去说这些政策对他们的影响，所以对他们来说，这个其实是一个很 value added 的 services。对，那 Suki 今天好像我们的问题好多，在网上面很多小朋友同伴们都问了很多问题，对吧？我们看看还有其他问题，我们再去 gather 一下如果没有的话，我再去问我今天的打算问的最后一个问题。So Tim, we actually have a lot of questions from the floor, and so Suki is going to summarize them and ask you later. But in the interim, let me ask you this question because So we have talked about a lot of like samples and stuff like that. I want to know, can you share your vision on like the future of the AI technology and how your company is going to make use of like this kind of like technology evolution in the next few years?
Well, I think there's 3 steps that we want to that we're looking at right now.
Yep.
Right. So the first step is collecting every law and every regulation, every country on the planet. So imagine one platform, a human-based platform that can look up tax laws in Indonesia, environmental regulations in Mexico, telecommunications laws in Italy in one singular platform. So we're collecting every single law, every single court case, every single regulation in every country on the planet. So the way that human beings essentially manage themselves from a government perspective, the way that we govern our human institutions, we're essentially aggregating all those laws and regulations. So once you have every law in every country on the planet, what do you want to do with it, right? So the second thing is we want to invest in understanding areas where laws will impact industry. So let's say, you know, a new tax law is passed, you know, in Vietnam. We want to understand inflation. We want to understand wage regulations. We want to understand manufacturing production. So all these different sort of outskirt areas that kind of come from that, right? So collecting that information around that. So now you have every law and every regulation on the planet, and you also have the impact of those laws and regulations. Then you want to build what I think is an artificially intelligent lawyer. The ability to actually understand, you know, the way in which laws are changing, and then to be able to advise clients, companies and government agencies, trade associations in the future in an automated way about the potential changes in those laws and regulations. And you can actually, for instance, in the future, ask legal questions. So things like, should I open this factory in Indonesia or not? What regulations will I be subject to? Are those regulations changing or not? Those are very specific questions. But if you ask that question, you can query, you know, the hundreds of billions of pages of legal text, and then all the information that we're collecting in an automated way. And you can actually get better than a lawyer. And I think that we are on the cusp of being able to see the future of artificial intelligence actually augment or support legal functions in companies. And I think the most powerful thing about this is that this type of information and advice only used to be available to the most powerful companies on the planet, right? The companies that could afford, you know, to pay millions of dollars to lawyers. But imagine taking that legal advice and then putting it in the hands of every single person on the planet. I think that potential to be able to provide legal advice, you know, to billions of people, I think is something that we are absolutely on the cusp of doing as a company overall.
Great. I think that's a very good trend and idea, so everyone can get access to it. I actually found a very catchy question from the crowd, which I really want to ask the same questions. Here, like a lot of people are talking about, should AI be regulated, AI technology? So Tim, what's your view on this?
I think that any new technology should probably have regulations on that. And so, you know, whether it's a new way of manufacturing, you know, biotechnology drugs, or whether it's, you know, some new, you know, personal computer technology, ultimately there needs to be limits in terms of what the technology can do. I will tell you personally, for instance, that I think AI is, there's a couple areas in terms of technology where technology moves very upwards like this. And maybe in the 70s it was personal computers, and in the 90s it was the internet, and then in the early 2000s it was the mobile device. AI is the next big trend. I mean, it is the thing that actually advanced technology to the next stage. I actually think that AI is bigger than the launch of the personal computer in the 1980s. And so I think that, because of the advancements in artificial intelligence, we need to regulate how they're used, right? So things like data privacy, or things like how we actually make decisions with AI, I think are very important. A lot of people are using AI to do things like lending or mortgages or make very important healthcare-oriented decisions for customers. I think that without regulations, there's a potential for a lot of misuse. And I think that what we need to do is get to a point where there's a balance between what companies are trying to accomplish, but also the regulatory protections that are provided for the users of these artificial intelligence capabilities over time.
Right, great. But I wish we could have more time today because we still have a lot of questions and answers from the crowd. But anyway, thanks a lot, team, today here to share your thoughts on the AI and AI technologies and the vision of your company. And I think it's a very fruitful discussion today. Thanks a lot.
And I'm sure next time when we catch up again, there will be a big improvement of AI and you have more to share to us.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you jumping on here, for sure.
Thank you, team.
Thank you so much, team.
Thanks a lot.
OK， 那今天我们就非常高兴，就是可以请到 team 来到我们现场。就是虽然只是短短的一个分享啊，但是其实我们也能感受到，就是这个 AI 发展的迅速。
对，
而且其实现在 AI 的发展能给我们带来更多的便捷。虽然是我们是担心说我们的工作，比如说像分析师的工作会不会就是很快的就被代替掉，或者是律师的工作，像 Tim 刚刚说的，其实。
但 Tim 最后说的几点是很对，就是 AI 这个技术其实把很多成本都带了下来。比方说以前我们去分析一些就是公共的一个政策，其实只有一些很有资源的机构，他们才能付得起钱去拿这些分析，去拿这些资讯。但是如果现在通过 AI technology 的话，我们未来几年这些成本是大大的降下来。所以，我们一般人去拿这些资讯会更加容易。所以，对整个社会来说，这个公平性是会慢慢去改善。所以大家不要看面前说，哎，我的工作是怎么样。其实你的眼光放远一点，其实对整个社会、整个人类来说，
人类的进步，
对是有一个很大的帮助的。当然也要。听你说的对，也要有一点的控制，这个 regulations 可能也要去完善一下。
对，我觉得当技术快速的发展到某一个地步的话，其实是需要一定的监管。那这个监管的话，对。那今天就谢谢各位观众跟我们一起来探讨这个 AI， 参与这个 AI。希望我们下一次再讨论的时候 ，AI 有一个更多的发展。谢谢大家，
谢谢大家。